Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. And I'm your host, Kent Pavelka, and we welcome you again to Metro and More of what you need to know about Metropolitan Community College. This is our quarterly conversation with David Brown, the president and CEO of the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and kind of a dual program today, looking at the fourth quarter of 2017, maybe looking at the whole year in review in general, and maybe a peek ahead.
Sure.
So let's start with the fourth quarter in general terms, and we'll get into specifics. Good fourth quarter?
Oh yeah. We as always are really busy getting ready for the next year and trying to close out the past year, the current year. So yeah, we hit some great numbers, and I think when you look back at the year as a whole, we got the vast majority of the stuff we said we were going to get done, we got done. Hit some really great numbers, which we'll talk about here in a second, for economic development, and legislatively we were successful with most of the stuff we were involved in. So yeah, in all, it was a very, very good year.
So is there a process at the end of the year you go through to analyze how things went, other than that it's obvious with the numbers, et cetera?
Yeah, so we have a report card that we put in front of our board every quarter. And on that report card are, of course, quarterly measures, but also annual measures. And so the last quarter of the year, we're not just kind of filling in the blanks for what we got done that last quarter, but also cumulatively, did we hit some of the numbers for year end? So some of the numbers, as an example, are macro numbers. So the things that we don't have direct control over, but we hope that the numbers will move in the right direction as a result of our work. So a good example is we want to have an increase in the total number of people that are employed in the region as a result of our work. So we know how many employees were created by the companies that we worked with throughout the year, but that typically is only about 40 or 50% of the overall employment move in the market. So that means the rest of the market also should be positively impacted by what we do. So so every year we then measure a whole host of kind of macro measures that said, did overall employment go up? Absolutely. Did overall percentage of people working in tech companies go up? Yeah, it did. Did per capita income go up? Yes, it did. So we don't have control over all those things, but we think that our work does have an impact on those big numbers, and so we report on those big numbers.
You don't have control because not everybody's a member, in a sense. Right?
Well, and we don't have our hands in every single project that takes place. So if we're, let's just say, for round numbers, that we deal with about 50% of all the capital investment that happens in the region, are actually clients of ours. But that means that we don't do anything on retail, we don't do anything on projects that happen without our help, and so that stuff should be happening in response to the work that we're doing, right? So we want to make sure that what we're doing is impactful enough that it drives the rest of those numbers.
Do you want to get into some numbers then?
Sure.
Sure. Do you want to talk fourth quarter, or you want to talk about the year?
Let's talk about the year. I mean, the fourth quarter ends up being, the year's a better number. So we have a goal, as you know, of capital investment of $600 million a year in capital investment commitments by companies that we're working with. This year we set an all-time record. We had just shy of $2.4 billion this year. Wow. So $600 million goal, we did about $2.4 billion. I mean, we've never done $1 billion before, so to do $2.4 billion is just an amazing, amazing year.
It's astounding.
So it always helps when you have a Facebook project in it that's $1.2 billion. So that kind of throws the number up. But even without Facebook,
we're still at 1.2.
We're still at 1.2. We would have doubled our goal for the year. So we had some really big projects. Projects like Facebook, of course, the Costco chicken processing facility, the Toast project in downtown.
Let's get to the 2.4 somehow.
well, the Costco project is $400 million.
Now you're at one.
Yeah, and 1,000 jobs. And, so we're at 1.6 billion just in those two projects, right? Yeah. And so those are two great big projects. You don't come across those every year. But when we had a couple of $200 million projects out there that sort of seemed like chicken feed this year. It's like, $200 million, big deal.
Normally you're pretty grateful.
Yeah.
Well, you still are.
Yeah, we still are. So we ended up closing on 50 projects this year. Our goal is 60. We've been as high as 90 in some years, and this is probably as low as we've been. But that's all a function of timing. And we got 200 prospect files that we now have open and operating, that 100 and half of those basically opened this year. So those projects can happen, like Facebook took 5.5 years to get done. Some projects like Toast took 120 days to get done.
Yeah.
And so it just depends upon the timing of those projects. Our goal is to keep the funnel full. Let's make sure there's a backlog that has the opportunity to generate significant investment each year. So the good news is we hit our job number. We did 2,522 new jobs committed, I think, and our goal is 2,500. So we hit that number. Number of projects we talked about. Number of visits outside the community. We did 50 prospect visits outside the community last year. We visited with 505 existing companies in the region to talk to them about their expansion projects or helping them solve their problems. We helped 33 companies get started up this year. So through our startup collaborative process, we're working with and helped 33 new companies get started, mostly in the tech space. And we generated about $18 million in venture capital angel investment into those 33 companies. So economic development-wise, it was a really good year.
Yeah.
And we're pretty proud of that.
Absolutely. So, how does and when do these numbers start to really affect the economy locally?
That's a really good question. So a project like Toast, as an example, will be leasing space starting really the end of this month, and they will immediately start hiring people. So we'll start seeing impact from their 800 job announcement that they made to come into downtown Omaha really quickly. Facebook basically started turning dirt as soon as they made the announcement they were going to build this thing. There are now more than 600 people in the construction jobs working on that site right now. So we see some of those impacts right away. The overall investment that they'll make, that $1.2 billion, probably won't be realized until 2020 when the entire facility is done. But done means that they've spent $1.2 billion on building and equipment. So that'll happen over the next 18 months. So we see some of these projects, literally, the Costco project's a good example. They're grading and starting to build that facility, but there's an article this week about the first farmer in this area who is actually building chicken barns, if you will, in order to grow chickens for the Costco plant. And there's going to be about 100 farmers where Costco and some investment combined will be about $250 million in new facilities on farms, where these farmers now, who had never been growing chickens before, will now grow chickens and have another revenue stream that will make it easier for them to continue being farmers, growing crops and those kind of things. So it varies across the board, from someone saying, I can lease that space today and hire people, to it's going to take me 2 years to build this sucker, and while I'm building it, I'm going to be employing a lot of construction people and buying equipment. And I mean, the other thing about Facebook and all the others of these projects, 80% of the vendors that Facebook is using on their project are local. So that's where the spin-off benefit comes from, right? You spend $1.2 billion, you're spending it in this market. And that makes a huge difference, whether it's in subcontractors on the construction side, or office supplies, or buying drywall and drywall trim. Who knows what it is, but all the things that go into building those things has an impact on the region.
When you learn of something this big and it becomes a reality, do you know at that time that they're going to use local resources?
Yeah, we push really hard on that. That's one of the pieces, and we're not alone on that. When you talk to chambers or economic development organizations around the country, one of the things you tout is the fact that we can support projects that announce here, that we have the capacity to build them, to supply them, to service them here.
The thing that came to mind is the oil work in North Dakota. They've got to import employees.
They do, absolutely. So you find some places, like North Dakota's a good example, 1% unemployment when they're actually doing all of the mining, if you will, there for petroleum and natural gas. They didn't have enough people, so they had to ship people in. Now, I must admit, some of our construction labor, there are not enough electricians in this market, and so there's a lot of electricians that have come in here from around the region that are working and don't call this home. I think that probably applies to steel workers. It probably applies to pipe fitters, to a whole host of different skilled trades where we just don't have enough of them. Hopefully,
enter Metropolitan Community
Metro,
College
and the $90 million investment that was just made on a trades program for both manufacturing and construction. Because frankly, in combination with organized labor and the training that they do, the apprenticeship programs, internship programs, the training that's going to be done here at Metro, we're trying to build the base of people that can fill those kind of really well-paying trade jobs here.
Yeah. The interesting tidbit I was thinking about when you're talking about the 2.4, and 1.2 of that is Facebook, and 600 million of that is
Costco,
Costco. That's just to get it going. And then
Oh, yeah.
now the impact financially going on forward
Right.
it isn't even part of that equation.
Yeah, so the Facebook deal is the best one to point at because it's an interesting project in that they only will employ 150 people over the next 5 to 10 years. High-paying jobs, skilled jobs, but it's still only 150 people within 1.2 billion. Now, that 1.2 billion is, again, we talked about it being local, but that becomes tax base for Sarpy County and limited amount of infrastructure use by the company. So there's not 1,000 trucks on the road every day when they open. It's 150 people, and they use a school system, sure, but it's not 1,000 people and their families using the school system. They use water, but that basically gets recirculated at a certain point. They're buying power, which helps us all because OPPD is owned by you and me, right? And so that's a good thing for the bottom line. But it also then provides tax base for big infrastructure improvements that need to happen in Sarpy County. A good example in Sarpy is, if you're familiar with the geography there, as you go south, there's a big ridge line that runs east and west, kind of a Highway 50 kind of area, that we've not had any kind of water or sewer extensions over and beyond that ridge line because it's so expensive to do. You basically got to put pumping stations in and start developing areas that were never developed before. You got to have a lot of money to do that. Facebook provides a huge capital investment that enables us to use that tax base in order to do that kind of improvement, which will then open up thousands of more acres south of the ridgeline, which will enable more residential development, more commercial development, more industrial development. So that the tax base that these things pay and the taxes their employees pay start feeding into the system and makes it easier for all of us.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. The snowball rolling down the hill.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't realize how big it's
Right.
going to get
Right.
from the initial look at it.
Right.
So when you put together, like you mentioned, 600 million is the goal.
Yeah.
Is it that every year, or how do you determine what you want to do, like in 2018?
So we put a 5-year plan in place. We've talked about Prosper Omaha before. We set some goals up front that said we want to do $3 billion in capital investment over 5 years. We want to do, I think it was 12,500 jobs or 12,000 jobs over the 5-year period. We wanted to do 300 projects over that 5-year period. So we set goals, and then each of those are, for the most part, just divvied up one chunk of 5 each, or a bit of it
Divided by 5.
divided
Yeah.
by 5. So that 600 million basically is our 5-year capital investment
Gotcha.
goal divided by 5.
Now that's Prosper Omaha?
That's Prosper
Yeah,
Omaha, right?
yeah.
Right. And before that, it was the GO campaign for 10 years, and so Prosper Omaha 1.0, if you will, is what we're operating on now. And then 2019 to 2023 is the next 5-year strategy, and that's called Prosper Omaha 2.0. And we've got a whole set of goals that we're putting in place for that.
So you've got a crew, including yourself, kind of working off in the distance without regard to the current.
Yeah, well, we always have to plan ahead.
program
I mean,
for the Prosper Omaha.
yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out what's coming over the next hill, and what do we have to do to alleviate any disruptions that might come down the pike, and or cause disruptions that we need to cause in order to have good things happen. So the site development thing I told you about with water and sewer extensions, that's a positive disruption. What can we do to cause positive things to happen? A potential, let's say a legislative package that would hurt the ability to educate all of our kids. That would be a negative disruption that we want to try and avoid. Okay, and so we're trying to think 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. And of course, this year we spent time looking 20 years down the road to try and figure out what it is we'd like to be, and then how do we backcast or back plan from that to be successful. And so the first 5 years of our next Prosper 2.0 strategy take into account a lot of the things we want to try and see happen over the next 20 years, but we're just going to get started. And so that's one of the fun things of my job is I get to play in all that
You
kind of
bet.
future spacing, whether it's strategic planning or future scoping or problem solving,
and
whatever
the
it is.
potential negative stuff.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we know that if we just continue on the path we are, as good as a place Omaha is right now, and every place has warts, but if you think about what a great place Omaha and this region are, basically everybody who wants a job's got a job. Yeah, that can always improve, but that's true. Education improvements is happening. Lots of optimism about Nebraska football and about Nebraska basketball
that?
and about
Yeah.
Creighton basketball.
Yeah.
Lots of optimism. mean, you just think about it, everyone sort of pretty much has a smile on their face and saying things are kind of going in the right direction. But if you look at the demographics, and if you look at the economy, our economy is only growing at about 1% a year. That's about half of what we think it probably should be growing at. And if you look at the cities that we compare ourselves against, their GDP growth rate is all about 2 to 3%. Our GDP growth rate is 1.2% this past year. Population growth rate here is somewhere between 0.85% to 1.2%. Most of the people that we compete with are doubling that. And so if we only grow our economy, our population at the rate that it organically would grow, we probably won't have enough people to fill the work that needs to be done as from a labor force perspective 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
At 1% growth, we'll be at about 1.2 million people by 2040. We think we need to be about 1.3 million people in this region in order to have a sufficient labor force to meet all the job requirements that our companies are going to have over that same timeline.
And the GDP in that case would be?
Well, even if we just increase the GDP growth rate by 2%, 0.2% on a rate perspective, that's a little faster than we're growing now. But that doesn't mean we've doubled GDP growth rate. If we double it, the labor force needs double as well. And so, we're saying we want to grow faster than our organic rate. We almost have to in order to meet the growth of the economy that we're seeing even now. And if we actually are successful growing the economy as fast as we want to over the next 2 decades, we need to grow our population even faster. And that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people here. We're already going to be 100,000 short over the next 20 years if we don't do anything else. Probably we need to grow that by 250,000. Think
over
about
how much time?
Over 20 years, by 2040. So if we're automatically going to be 1.2 million by 2040, what do we look like if we're 1.5 million?
What's the answer to that?
Well, I know what I'd like us to look like, but we have to basically figure out how we can actually grow faster than we normally have. And that means the kind of jobs that you create have to be probably higher wage, more attractive to people who will move here, because this population growth is not going to come because all of a sudden people are having more babies
for the weather.
or fewer people are dying. Our birth and death rate ratio is about even. We're a little bit on the plus side, but for the most part, we're pretty stable. So virtually all of our growth comes from somewhere else. It's either people not leaving and or people coming.
Yeah.
And so that means we've got to make this a place that is really attractive to people to stay and attractive to people to come to. And if you look at why people move and why they stay, it typically is family is number one and career is number two.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those, family does happen irrespective of what you do with place, but not at the rate that we'd like it to. But Omaha's in a good enough place now that you can convince people it's a good place to stay if you're already here. But people are only going to come here if they think it's a kind of place where they could enjoy a great lifestyle, where they could have a great career, where their kids could get a great education, where they're safe, where they could recreate the way they want to recreate, where they can have a career that has a path that they can see forward, so they don't have to move from Omaha to go somewhere else to advance their career. We're not in that situation yet, where we're not well known as a place that people automatically want to go on the list and go see Omaha. We got to become that list. We got to get on that list. And we got to start doing things in the community that enhance this environment for young professionals of all types, a very diverse mix of people. We're going to be a primarily non-white community by 2050. More than 50% of our population will be non-white. Today it's about 20%. So we're basically quadrupling, maybe almost tripling the minority population here as it relates to the overall population. So there's a lot of changes that are going to happen. And we got to make sure this is a place that can deal with that, and more than just survive, we have to be able to thrive in that environment.
Right. So, yeah, that's an astounding fact or projection.
Yeah.
So explain just real quickly the relationship of GDP and the economy. You were talking about.
Sure. So GDP is basically the sum total of what the size of our economy. Add all the bells and whistles, subtract the stuff that's going out the other end, company startups, company failures, sales, productivity, throw it all in the mix, and in the end, the best number we can come up with that measures the robustness of your economy is the regional GDP rate. So nationally, you'll hear these numbers that says, well, the nation last quarter grew at an annualized rate of 2%. Mm-hmm. For a number of years, it grew about 1.5%, less than 2%. Now we're hopefully nationally it's talking about 2 and 3% growth. Same kind of measure here. You have to look at how big our economy is and what's it going to take for it to grow faster than
So
it
we
is.
need to keep pace with that national number, or
Well,
be ahead of it?
it'd be nice to keep pace with the national number. We don't. And if the national number's 2, we're running about 1.2 or 1.
And the key to it is more people.
Well, you can't really grow businesses, even with productivity gains through automation and that kind of stuff, without people. I mean, it does come down to having the best workforce, the best talented workforce, and being able to predict growth in that workforce. So if GDP growth rate is going to double, then we've got to have a significant increase in the population growth rate too, because that then directly feeds into how many people are here to work. So for every 100 people that are in the population, about 50 of them are working. Okay, so basically,
Is that a good percentage?
yeah, so it's 2 to 1. So if population goes up by 100,000, we'll get 50,000 more workers out of that. It's a generalization, but that's the kind of number we tend to use.
So businesses will come if the people are there, or vice versa?
I guarantee you that he who has the best and most people over the next 2 decades is going to win the economic development war.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
So then how are we doing in terms of those attractive traits that I know we've been working on
Yeah.
to bring people in?
You know, Omaha is blessed that we continue to be ranked on a lot of those rankings out there as a great place to live, great quality of life, great education system. We fall down on some things. We are really good on others. We're doing okay. But where where okay is not okay enough, if you will, is when people are trying to choose you as a place to live and work before they even think about what company they might work for.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to see the attributes of a diverse place, a place that has the kind of culture that they're looking for, that has the kind of, I'll call it nightlife, but social life that they want to have, that has a kind of population that they want. I mean, we will be.
What are our impediments in that respect?
Well, one of the things we've been working in the last year is that diversity of our population is a challenge. When 80% of your population is white, then a diverse population, which is the fastest growing segment of the population in this country, is going to look at that population and say, do I want to live there if there's not many people who look like me there? Or if there's not a lot of people who have the same cultural amenities that I want to have, well, why would I want to live there?
Well, that's a kind of a catch-22 thing, isn't it? I mean, you can't, until it gets there, how do you become attractive?
Well,
Until you
not
get to
really.
that ratio.
I think that there's lots of examples around the country of saying, how do we create a micro environment where folks are comfortable, and then as that environment grows, they get even more comfortable.
Gotcha.
So, we have a pretty robust African American population here. And they have they're all the things culturally that they want to have. It's just like the Latino community and the Asian community. I mean, there's a lot of different ethnicity around this community. But what we don't have is enough scale there to be able to tell someone of Hispanic descent or African American descent that if you come here, all the things that you can experience in other bigger cities you can find here.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to work on that. And so again, it's not just about stuff, it's also about perception and are there career opportunities for us here, and is the workforce diverse and inclusive, and are there opportunities for everybody here? I mean, those are all perceptions that we can deal with, and in some cases we have to fix. So
Do you think we're making headway?
I believe we are, but just like anything else, Ken, if you're not measuring it, you really don't know. Can we figure out how to measure it? And is it spotty or is it consistent? I mean, the example I like to use is a Business Ethics Alliance. Before that was put in place 10 years ago, if I talked to you or talked to any other businessman and said, are ethics important to you? You'd say yes, right? And then some companies, the bigger they were, typically had an ethics program within their company that said, here's how we deal with our suppliers, here's how we deal with our customers and our vendors and our employees, and here's what ethics are important to us, and so here's how we measure that internally, and we have a really strong ethics desire in this company. So we learned through that program how to take those lessons from companies who were focusing on it and provide that toolkit to small and medium-sized businesses too. So to a point that now Business Ethics Alliance is a well-known organization in town. Hundreds of CEOs go to their executive breakfast every year, and the discussion about business ethics is something that happens pretty regularly. Okay, so we took basically the discussion of ethics from, yeah, we're all ethical, don't worry about it, to let's not only measure it, but let's celebrate the fact that ethics are important in our companies and there's a bottom line impact of it. Same thing can happen with diversity and inclusion. You know, we have companies that are overly, I mean, really committed to it. Overly is the wrong word. Really committed to it, and do it every day. And there's some companies that say, yeah, we're committed to it, but probably can't define for you what they do to make sure that they are a diverse and inclusive employer.
So we got to show them how.
Absolutely. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to try and figure out where are we deficient? How do we put a strategy in place to make that happen? And so Chamber is all in moving forward from this year beyond to make sure that we help our companies do that.
Very cool stuff. Running out of time again.
As
I know
always.
we wanted to talk about a number of other things. Business expansion, I think have we talked about that?
Yeah, we
too?
did.
Yeah.
We got with more than 500 companies that we contacted,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to do that. It's an important part of what we do. Startups are important for us.
40 years for Leadership Omaha.
Yeah, that's a big deal. 40-year anniversary for Leadership Omaha. 2,500 alumni, I think, out there right now that have gone through Leadership Omaha
My
or
wife's
Omaha
one of
Executive Institute. She was probably in the best class ever, like all the other Leadership
Yeah,
Omaha
yeah.
graduates were, right? So yeah, that's very exciting, and we've modified that program to include some new leadership training now on the business side rather than just the civic side. So we've added some programs with mindset that's to help teach people how to be leaders in the business world. We're doing a lot more work on that as well over the next couple of years.
Tell us about the new building,
Yeah, it's coming along.
or is
So,
it plural?
well, it's one building, thankfully.
Okay.
We're going to be in what was building number 5 on the Conagra campus. I toured it today, and they were getting the framing done and starting to put drywall up. And so we think that we'll be in there by mid-April. So maybe by the next time we talk, we'll either be in it or we'll be close to being in it. And then just yesterday, we sent out an RFP to all the commercial real estate community and said that our existing chamber building and property are for sale. And we're looking for an opportunity for someone to come in and redevelop that property. And so we can sell that space and then move into our new space at the old Conagra building, which, by the way, is now called the Chamber Building. There's a sign out front that says,
Cool.
this is the Chamber Building.
Is that the permanent sign?
Yep,
or?
absolutely.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. Speaking of Conagra, you know, we talk about all these numbers and the 2.4 billion. How did their move affect the net picture from when they moved from here to Omaha, or largely moved from here to Chicago?
Yeah, when they moved their headquarters from here, of course, they took 300 high-paying jobs, and so when you look at wages and executive jobs, that has an impact on the statistics for your community. But they also still have 1,200 high-paying jobs here in this market, and of the 1,000 jobs that I think were ultimately eliminated upon their leaving here, the vast majority of those people ended up getting jobs here in this market somewhere else.
Thanks partially to the Chamber's efforts.
Yeah, I think we had a lot to do with just exposing folks to the opportunity of these great employees, and so we didn't see hardly a glitch in unemployment or in or even new employment numbers. Those folks just kind of transferred from one to the other. So
Just missed that 1,000 number.
yeah. So we're very, very close on that. So I don't think we saw a statistical impact. I mean, there's always a challenge when you lose a headquarters, but you got to give them credit that this most recent announced redevelopment on that property is, it's a $500 to $600 million investment that's going to be made on that property that's going to transform, basically the eastern end of the old market. It's going to be spectacular.
Absolutely.
And so marry that with the riverfront development strategy that we're seeing plans out there for, and the next 10 years are going to be really remarkable when it comes to redevelopment in Omaha.
So you're going to be around all 10?
You never know.
Gets to that point.
10
where you
years
wonder,
is a long ways out there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I'd be here for 14 years like I have been, but
what do you most want to see happen this year?
we have to get ourselves settled and make sure we're still providing great services in our building to our members. I was talking to you earlier off camera that most of the stuff that we celebrate tends to be external to us, things that we're involved in, but isn't about the chamber. We have a big piece this year because it's our 125th anniversary. We're moving into new space. We're providing a whole bunch of new services. We're trying to get Prosper Omaha 2.0 fundraising off the ground. It's a big year for us. And so we're doing a lot of internal looking this year too to make sure we're getting all that right so that we're really poised to do really good work over the next 5 years. So I want to make sure we get our stuff done right this year and be really prepared to do really great stuff over the next 5.
Thanks, David. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. It's always
Appreciate
fun. And thank you for being with us on Metro and More. Our goal is to better acquaint you with the mission, leadership, and the reach of the college. I'm Kent Pavelka for Metropolitan Community College.
If you have comments or questions about the program, please email us at metrovision@mccneb.edu. Thanks for watching.